So Mormont asks him when he's going to have use of his hands again soon. Like, we are on Ned's chapter and he is in the dungeon. The floor is all nasty and smells like pee because they didn't have toilets. Did they not provide them with a toilet? Even so, they're down there by themselves, so it might have overflowed. Whatever. It stinks. He's kind of floating in between sleep and being awake, but he can't really tell a difference because it's so dark. He's calling himself a fool because he trusted these people, which he shouldn't have. At least he recognizes that he messed up. At least he's not just down there like, well, I did all I could. No, he knows he was a fucking idiot. And he's cursed himself for it. And then he starts thinking about Cersei and how she said when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And he's in a dungeon now and he's seeing this is probably not going to end well. In his mind, he's thinking of all these people that maybe are out there gathering forces to have his back. Maybe, you know, Robert's brothers are building armies to come and take the throne and release him. He's thinking about his kids at Winterfell. His leg is hurting him, so you know that's adding to the pain and confusion of the situation that he's in. And again, he's hallucinating, having conversations with Robert. Robert's telling him, look at me, I'm dead and killed by a pig and you're locked in a dungeon. This poor Ned. He's just having a rough time. As he should be. He's locked in a dungeon. So again, Ned's hallucinating and dreaming and having all these memories, and he's thinking about this tournament from back in the day when Prince Rhaegar won a match against somebody else. I don't really remember. He rode past his wife and laid the crown of winter roses at Lyanna's lap, and everybody like stopped smiling and was like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, he's not doing that. Ned's hallucinating that he reached out to grab the roses and took them away or whatever, and his hand started to bleed. And then he remembers Lyanna loved winter roses. Like, there are so many clues. Why would even... Okay. The story was that, of course, Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna. But he wrote, like, he was showing that he loved Lyanna. He laid this winter roses crown in her lap. He didn't just, like, throw them at her. He laid them in her lap. And then Ned says Lyanna loved winter roses. So he gave her something that she loved. I can see why it was such a big theory in the books because it's, like, painfully obvious. So he's sitting there, lost in all his memories, and the door to his cell opens, and he's asking for food, and a voice comes back and says, no, it's wine. And then he realizes that it's Varys. So he gives Ned some wine, and Ned says this is the same poison that they gave Robert, and Varys is kind of offended. He says, no, this is wine. I'm trying to be nice to you. So he takes a guzzle of it and gives it back to Ned, who starts to drink it. Ned asks about Sansa and Arya, and Varys tells him that, you know, Arya escaped. They don't know where she is. Sansa's being held with the queen. It says that Cersei isn't going to have him killed because his wife, Catelyn, is holding Tyrion up in the Vale. And Varys says, well, you know, they let him go. He's probably dead in the mountains by now, and that's probably not good for your cause. And Ned's like, yeah, I'm screwed. Ned tells him, if that's true, then go ahead and slit my throat because I'm done for. And Varys tells him, that's not what I want. I don't want your blood. And Ned is thinking about, too, you know, a couple days ago in the throne room when he was standing there just watching everything happen. He's like, you didn't help me then. And Varys is like, I was standing there unarmed, unguarded. Like, what do you expect me to do? I couldn't do anything for you right then. Ned asks him to let him out of the cell. And Varys tells him, well, I could, but am I going to do that? No, because questions will be asked and the answers would lead back to me, and I can't have that. Ned says, will you at least send a message out for me? And Varys says, you know, that depends on what the message is, because again, I can't be caught up in this. This is a whole big mess you have made it here. And Ned's thinking, like, you know, what are your motives for even being here? What do you want out of this? And Varys tells him he wants peace. His whole purpose for anything is for the greater good of the realm. Ned asks about Robert's poisoning. He asks if Varys was the one who suggested Lancel, and Varys says yeah, you know, because if it wasn't going to be that, he was going to die some other way in the woods, and Robert was becoming unruly and they couldn't do anything with him, and Cersei was going to have it done eventually anyway. And he tells Ned he was dumb to not take up Littlefinger's offer when he made it. And Ned's kind of confused, like, how the heck do you know that? And Varys, of course, knows everything. Varys informs him that, you know, the queen has enemies everywhere now. The Stannis brothers, people from Dorne, Robb is marching down from the north with an army, and is like, he's just a kid. And Varys tells him, yeah, but he's a kid with an army right now. So she's pissed off. So Varys tells her that the Queen's worst nightmare is, the Lannisters are off battling the Starks and the Tullys right now. Meanwhile, Stannis comes over, takes the throne, and kills them all. And that's obviously not optimal to life. He tells Ned the smartest thing for you to do right now is just to tell the Queen what she wants so you can get out of this mess. And Ned, of course, being honorable, he's like, you want me to just lie about this? And Varys says, no, I want you to serve the realm. Tell her what she wants. Tell your son to lay down his swords so you can live to do battle and be honorable somewhere else, because you dying doesn't serve any purpose. Varys is like, no, I'm not in league with him. He's the second most devious person in the kingdom. I might give him some information every once in a while so he thinks that we're cool, but I don't even like him. So Varys is asking him again, just tell the Queen what she wants to hear. And Ned's like, my honor isn't, I can't compromise that. He's like, okay, but what about your daughter's life? Sansa is being held by her. That, of course, chokes Ned up a little bit, because he's like, you might forget her in this whole situation, but the Queen hasn't, and she still has her. Ned says, no, leave my daughter out of all these schemes of yours. She's nothing more than a child. And he's like, do you remember Prince Rhaegar's daughter? She was nothing more than a child in this too, and look what happened to her. And Varys says, the next person who visits this cell could bring you bread and cheese and some medicine for your leg, or they could bring you Sansa's head. It's kind of up to you. And that's it. Varys is right, though. I mean, he tried. He tried so hard. Okay, so Catelyn and Robb are now approaching the twins, and they need to go across this bridge, which, of course, is being held by Walder Frey. Robb says that Frey has 4,000 men. Surely he intends to join us in battle instead of going up to meet up with the Lannisters. Catelyn says he is your father's bannerman, but some men take their oaths more seriously than others. Lord Glover's there, and he's like, do you think he might betray us? And Catelyn says, I don't think he even knows what he wants to do. Frey just wants power. He's never had any, and he's going to wait to see how this kind of plays out before he makes a decision. And Robb reminds her that, yeah, that we have no other way across the river, so he has to join us. They're making camp for the night. Theon rides up and tells her that Brendan said to tell her they've crossed some Lannister men, that they had to kill some Lannister scouts. And she says, when you ride back to him, tell him to shoot down every bird that he sees, because she doesn't want any messages going between Walder Frey and Lannister army. And Theon says he's already, your uncle's already thought of that. A few more birds and we'll have enough for a pie. Theon says that some Frey men have been fighting some of the Lannisters, so it kind of looks like they are joining the Starks, but Catelyn reminds him, like, these are his own lands. Of course he's going to defend his own lands. That doesn't mean that he's not going to join up the Lancers at some point. Robb's thinking that they can just fight the Walder Freys. Robb's thinking they can just fight the Freys and take the twins for themselves. She's like, yeah, you could do that, but of course you'll lose men, and the Lannisters could come from behind us and kill us all that way too, because they have a huge army. What, like 8,000 men? Something like that. So, that's probably not a good idea. And Robb's like, well, what would my dad do? And she says, he would find a way across, whatever it took. Robb's getting kind of sulky about the whole thing, and Catelyn's like, listen, you sound like a little boy right now. Man up, figure out what to do in the situation. He's like, what do you think we should do? And she's like, the Freys have held this bridge for 600 years, and never once has anyone really asked them what they want. Maybe we should do that. So they send word that they, want to have a talk. Some of the Frey guys come out and ask for Robb to go in to talk to Walder Frey, and they all decide that's a bad idea. They send Catelyn instead, and one of the Frey sons stays in her place. That was probably not a good idea, too. Like, I don't know if Walder Frey, he had so many sons that sacrificing one of them he probably wouldn't care about. You know what I mean? But anyway, Catelyn goes to talk to him. And then he spends like a couple pages being a jerk and complaining about how no one respects him, And Catelyn's like, can we talk in private? Because all these faces are around. So Walder sends everybody out of the room so they can have some negotiations. Catelyn goes back to the camp with Robb later on that night, and she lays out the plan for him that he has to accept in order for them to cross the bridge. So Catelyn says, we've struck a deal. Everyone can cross except for 400 men he wants to keep here to help hold the bridge. And she tells Robb, you know, make sure you give this order to someone you can trust because Frey can't be trusted. We really don't even know if he'll keep up with this. She says that there are 2 boys who are about 8 years old that Walder Frey wants to be kept as wards in the Stark house. So 2 boys will be going up north to Winterfell. There's also, Frey also has 1 son that he wants to be a squire of Robb so that later on he can be made a knight. He says that Arya has to marry one of his sons. Everyone knows that she's going to be pissed off about that. And then he says that Robb has to marry one of his daughters and he can pick whichever one he wants. Basically, Walder Frey is tired of everybody disrespecting him, and he's like, if we're going to do this, I'm going to be so entrenched in the Stark family that y'all are finally going to start to respect me. It's a good deal for him. I mean, it really is. Because he's kind of a joke. Everyone's waiting for him to die. As well they should be, because he's awful. But, you know, but he wants his family to be respected a little bit. I mean, I kind of understand that. It'd be easier for them to respect you and like you if you weren't such a jerk. But by any means necessary. So anyway, Robb agrees to the deal. Catelyn's proud of him because it shows that he's not thinking like a little boy. A man would make a marriage pact knowing that that means he can't get out of it and he can't marry someone that he really loves because he has made this pact. But I mean, he gets to choose which daughter he wants. So I guess that's good. Sucks for her, but I'm just saying. Okay, so we are on to Jon Snow's chapter. He is going to visit Lord Mormont. Someone mentioned in the last video down in the comments that, you know, asked if I had noticed that Jon Snow, when he touched the fire, the lamp or whatever, to throw it on the White Walker, that it felt like, you know, like a whisper of hint or whatever, like it wasn't that hot. And I chalked it up to adrenaline, and I still kind of do, because in this chapter, like, his hands are all, like, gross and blistered because they're burned and stuff. Like, fine, it wasn't hot to him, but it still fucking burned him. So, I get what they were hinting at, but he was still blistered and oozing and stuff. So, you know, adrenaline is a thing. Jon is talking to Mormont. He mentions that he knows that there was a raven sent in the night, and he wonders what the news is. Mormont tells him everything that happens in King's Landing, that Sir Selmy Barristan was relieved of Kingsguard duty, that they put the Hound in his place, which he thinks is ridiculous. And then Barristan was named a traitor or accused of treason, so they sent 2 men after him and he killed them like it was nothing, and now he's like out in the world and no one knows where he is. And Mormont's like, we have shadows stirring in the woods, dead people are walking the halls, and we have this dumb boy sitting on the throne. He's like, basically, we're fucked. Mormont's saying maybe they never got my letter because there wasn't really a response. Aemon tells me what he thinks he needs to know from the letter, and Jon's thinking, yeah, and then you tell me even less, so I know nothing. So Mormont wants to know when he's going to have use of his hands, and Jon tells him he's going to be able to use them soon. And Mormont says, good, because you're going to need this, and he hands him Longclaw. Jon is shocked and surprised because Mormont said that it's been in his family for centuries, and it of course should have gone to his son, who we know who that is. Jon says, you know, this should have gone to your son. And Mormont's like, my son dishonored my house's name and you saved my life. So this goes to you. He had the pommel changed on the top. Jon says, my lord, you honor me, but you know, he doesn't want to take it. Mormont's like, spare me your butts. You saved my life. Just take the goddamn sword. Like, he's just like, listen, just take it, okay? We don't need to talk about it anymore. Jon finally takes it, and he's thinking of, you know, when he was in Winterfell, how he would have loved to be named an actual Stark and for his father to give him the sword Ice. But then he's like, how could I have thought of ever cheating Robb out of his birthright? So he feels bad, and now he's being presented a sword that's supposed to go to someone else's son, and he still feels bad. Jon asks if it has a name, and Mormont says it was named Longclaw, and Jon's like, well, wolves have claws too, so he's just going to keep the name Longclaw. Mormont informs him that he sent Sir Alliser to go to King's Landing with the hand of the guy that Jon killed the second time to ask for more men from King's Landing. He's like, he's, you know, known there. He was once a part of their circle, so they know him, they respect him, and they'll listen to him more than if I said someone else. And also it puts like some space between the two of you because the two of you don't get along. He's like, listen, I understand what happened in the dining hall that one time, but you got to grow the hell up. You're a man now, and you have long claw. You got to start behaving like you should. But at least this will give you some time away from him because he's a jackass. That's my adding too, but he didn't say that part. So he leaves Mormont's room, and he's like surrounded by all his friends. They of course know and heard that Mormont was going to give him the blade, so they want to see the Valyrian steel, and they're all happy for Jon, and Jon's like huffy about it because he's Jon. So he shows them the blade and everything, then he kind of huffs off, and they're like, what the fuck, we were having fun. Jon's all pissed. So, well, I mean, obviously, rightfully so. He's still worried about his family stuff, and he wants to leave. So he goes to his room, and Sam comes to him, and at first he thinks Sam just wants to see the sword, and Sam's like, you know, I was supposed to get my father's sword. I've seen swords, I'm cool. He's like, no, Maester Aemon wants to see you. Jon wants to know why, and then he realizes that Sam told Maester Aemon that he wanted to leave, so he's pissed. He goes to see Maester Aemon. Maester Aemon's kind of talking in riddles, and Jon realizes that, so he's trying to keep up with him and figure out what the heck he's talking about. And then he asks Jon, you know, why don't you think men of the Watch are allowed to marry and have a family? And Jon says he doesn't know, and Aemon says it's because if they do that, then they'll love something outside of duty, and if they do, then they won't be as honorable and held by that duty as they are if they are married to, you know, a wife and have a family and everything, which makes sense. If it's time for you to go off to war or defend the realm or whatever against whatever's on the other side of the wall, and you have a family, you're going to want to protect that family more than you're going to want to stay here and do your duty. He's basically telling Jon, like, at this point, you're a man of the Watch. You can't be bound by all this other stuff. Jon, of course, doesn't think he understands, and he's like, do you know where I got my name from? Do you know who I am, son? Like, do you know who I am? My father named me after Prince Aegon, the Dragon Knight. And then finally it clicks in Jon's head, you know, who he is. He's like, you are Aegon Targaryen? He's like, yes, son, that's who I am. Like, basically saying, like, he's a Targaryen. His whole family was slaughtered during Robert's Rebellion, which was started by his dad's best friend. And he was at the wall when all that was happening. And he had to make that decision. And he has to live with that with every day of his life. So he tells Jon, you know, make your decision, but understand you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. And that's it for this section. I will see you again tomorrow with another one, which I'm going to film in a few hours. If you have any thoughts, comments, all that stuff, put them down below, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.